Canby. I am author and illustrator of books for children, and I'm going to tell you about a book that I wrote, a story that I wrote 30 years ago called Rodney. And yes, you heard that right, it was 30 years ago. I wrote the story Rodney when I was a teenager and my sister was born, and there is a big age gap between us. And I wrote it as a story for her, something to read to her. Also, I was about to go into university and study illustration and art, and I wanted to illustrate something of my own. So I wrote the story Rodney, and flashed it out to 30 years later, and I had written and illustrated a number of books before, and I was looking for something to send to my publisher. And I remembered Rodney, the story of a tortoise who is very small, but he has huge dreams, big dreams, and he wants to live life up among the trees. And 30 years ago, in the original story, Rodney ended up, I won't give away the ending, but Rodney ended up in a bonsai garden where he went from being small in a big environment to being very big in a small environment. So that was the concept of Rodney, about perspective and looking at feeling small when everything around you is big, and then feeling big when everything around you is small. And I guess that was maybe what was happening with my sister and I when she was born. She was a baby and I was not. And so Rodney went from there and became a CBCA Notable in 2020, which was very exciting. 30 years in the making. Rodney.
Hi, I'm Mike Speechley. This is my picture book, The Gift. It was included as a notable book in the 2020 Children's Book Council of Australia Picture Book of the Year Awards. So the first inspiration for this story, the very first seed of an idea came about when my parents visited my house, and they saw my garden and they said, Mike, you just need to take one weed out a day. You take one weed out a day, you'll allow the other plants to grow. They will flourish. And I thought that was a really great metaphor for life. And it was something that just stuck in my head. A few years later, I needed to rely on that metaphor. Something happened to me that really shook my world around. And so I got started on creating this book during that time. I sat around, I drew some weeds. Here's another weed here. And I actually wrote the story in the bathtub before coming here to the Fremantle Literature Centre for an event. And I wrote down and I penned the story down very quickly. It just appeared in my head. I'd been thinking about it for a while, but it just appeared in my head. And so here's some of my very first scribblings for the story. It used to be called The Garden, but it's changed a little bit as the process has moved forward. Another thing that I did was I knew that there was one page that was definitely going to be in the book, and that page was a page full of flowers at the end. So what I decided to do is I went to Europe, and I just set myself the task of drawing flowers every day while I was travelling around. This one here actually became quite pivotal to the story in that something happened when I did this drawing. I actually bought the original flower. I learnt later from a shop called L'Histoire d'une fleur, which means the story of a flower. I had no idea at the time that this was going to be a little moment while I was doing the drawing that would affect the storyline of this future book. Another big moment in the production of this book was when I sat down with my publisher at Penguin. I knew that the book was okay, the storyline was all right, but it wasn't right. And she just gave me some advice, and she said, could you make this story about a young person and an old person? And immediately I knew what was going to happen. I got goosebumps actually. The good news is that the story offers hope. There's a lot of colour at the end of it. And it's a beautiful story about friendship, kindness, giving, community, all those sorts of beautiful things that happen in the world. So this is Rosie. She's the main character in the book. She's such a great character. She's loving, she's kind, she's brave. Hopefully I've reflected that well, because she actually represents all of the people that helped me out when I needed that little bit of extra help, when I needed that little bit of colour in my life. And I think she exemplifies what it is to be a really great, kind and caring person. She's the kind of person who just pulls out that one weed a day, does little things, and eventually all of the flowers will grow.